Hello, everybody. Interesting to hear a female voice this time round and not Kok Hwa's voice to start the session.
Yes, indeed, Michelle. This is the first time. The AMA series.
Yes,
Hello,
part of the AMA
everyone.
series. Yes, and this time round, we flip the tables around, right? And Kok Hwa is the one in the hot seat tonight. And my role is here to grill him with the difficult questions of being a publisher. So very quick introduction of myself for those of you who have no idea who I am. My name is Michelle. I'm a human experience facilitator with this company called Chrysalists. And my role today is just to facilitate the conversation. So thank you those of you who are watching in and tuning in and really curious about asking Kok Hwa all the difficult questions. My role is to facilitate the session and give him the questions to answer. So without further ado, maybe we just ask Kok Hwa himself to introduce himself and what he does.
Hey, Michelle, I thought that's your role.
So I can do a bit of introduction lah, huh? So Kok Hwa is a good friend, definitely, which is why I'm here to make things difficult for him, to actually ask him the questions and to help facilitate the session. And he is really a very well-respected publisher, at least from my perspective, right? And I've attended his authorship workshop as well, and really picking up all the points and trying to start writing my book. And he always tells me, Michelle, just have to start first. So it is that one step forward, right? And I think in the process of him being a publisher as well, he is really taking very good care of the authors under his wing, really providing them with a lot of platforms to share, which is why he had this entire series of 10 episodes of Ask Me Anything, I Am an Author. And, you know, as much as I think for some of us, we are very keen to be authors, we are also very afraid, right? We have a lot of conversations in our head about like, so how to become an author? You know, then publishing, how does it work? So which is why today we invite him. So maybe I think I sell enough koyok. So maybe this time around, let Kok Hwa himself also share a bit more about himself and the kind of work that he does.
Okay, I think first and foremost, I need to thank Michelle, for finally giving me this opportunity to do AMA, not as a host, but as an interviewee. Thanks for seeding the idea. I'm so happy that today we finally made it happen. Yeah, as a special episode for our AMA series. I guess, okay, I'm a self-described archaeologist. What I like to do is to discover the inner essence in humans. And after discovering your inner essence, of course, then we package it as a book and we showcase you to the world. And like what Michelle say, we do a lot of, we create a lot of platforms and opportunities basically to showcase authors as well as the content that they have created to the world. Yeah, so stay tuned. We have talks in libraries coming up. Libraries is going virtual as well, so we have virtual talks coming up. More radio interviews as usual, all lining up with the whole series of candid creation authors. So that's very much what I do. I call myself a coach sometimes, because I like to help first-time authors. We have actually published for many first-time authors to help them really crystallize the idea they have in mind and finally releasing it into the world. Over to you.
Thank you, Kok Hwa, for this succinct introduction of all the the different things that you do, right? I know you're not just a publisher and you're not just a coach. You are many other things. But today our conversation is really just in that hat and in that role of being a publisher. So please send in your questions. We will be very glad to let Kok Hwa be the one to answer those questions. And while we're waiting for your questions to come in, we'd like to just kickstart a conversation. I actually asked him this question because he came up with the title for today's session, right? And it's about writing and publishing non-fiction books. So I actually asked him, I said, hey, why you come up with this title? Like, why non-fiction books? So maybe, Kok Hwa, you can just share a bit about like, what is the niche? Is that a niche that you're looking at about writing and publishing non-fiction books?
Yeah, good question. So, I mean, basically in the book trade, you would see that there are largely two big categories. We have the fiction books and the non-fiction books. Yeah. So I always like to joke with people that I can't possibly bao ka liao, right? So bao ka liao means the Hokkien for cover everything. Yeah. So we prefer to niche ourselves. So just like many publishers out there, we all have a particular niche. And for me, we prefer to niche in non-fiction books because simply because I like to read non-fiction books. So first and foremost, because of that, then I find that I'm able to offer a reader's perspective and also a publisher's perspective into whatever work that's been created. And more often than not, non-fiction books is a means to an end. And I really like to see how we can actually create these means for authors, for them to really live a larger life than themselves and impact more lives. So I find that more purposeful and more meaningful. Yeah, doesn't mean that fiction book is not, but it is a story, different ball game, and require different expertise. Yeah, but that being said, sometimes due to popular demand, we do release some fiction books. Yeah, once in a while.
Nice. And we actually have the first question coming in from Chun Seng.
Don't say.
He asks, when will you be writing your own book? And what would your book be about?
Thank you, Chun Seng. Yeah. I thought once upon a time we had a conversation about co-authoring a book, Chun Seng.
Maybe this is a good time to start.
So my idea keeps changing. So yes, actually previously one of the contributing author to a book that was again published by Candid Creation Publishing. Yeah. For me, the idea has always been changing, and I find that it's kind of difficult for me to focus on myself at this phase of my life when a lot of my energy and time is actually spent on the authors that I'm supporting. From the point of really running workshops to inspire, to encourage them, the curation of the work, releasing the works, promoting them. I kind of put myself in the back seat most of the time. So the idea keeps changing. Yeah, I could write a book on action learning. I could write a book on book publishing. Of late, I also thought of, hey, why don't I write a book on team leadership, shared leadership, and stuff like this. So these are all the different kind of topics that I'm passionate with. So stay tuned. Maybe the day I retire will be the day the book comes out.
I think the day you retire will be very, very far away since you have so many different types of projects on your hands. But I think another curious question would probably be, what is your motivation to want to do the work that you do as a publisher? Like you said, the journey is quite long, right? When you interact with the authors, what motivates you to do the work you do?
Okay. Very good question, Michelle. So actually, most people will know that publishing is definitely a tough industry to be in. Definitely not get rich quick. Okay, so please don't join for the money. There's a lot of hard work involved, and the gestation period to bring a book out into the market is terribly long as well. Especially we curate quality books out there. So really, you need to be driven by something deeper of what are you trying to do. So for me, I see book as a multiplier. Books having a multiplier effect for the authors as well as for the content that they have created. And first and foremost, this content needs to be able to impact lives or largely humanity in a positive way. So we don't accept every script that comes to us. So unless it serves a particular purpose and we feel that it does help, then we will take on the project and release the book. Yeah. So the work that I do often see myself like a conduit, yeah, between the content creator and the market itself. And I find a lot of joy because all these years of meeting hundreds of authors, of creating different content, of how they can actually use what they know in terms of their knowledge and experience, rather than just keeping it to themselves or bringing it to the grave one day. They're actually willing to invest the effort, put in the effort to write a book, yeah. And my role is really to help them then bring this out to the market and to let more people know, so that we can impact lives more broadly, lah. And this is very evident whenever authors receive testimonials from their readers after reading their book, of sharing with them how it has helped them, how their life has changed because of the book. And I think personally, Michelle, you also agree that because of the many books that we read, sometimes our lives, get impacted in very positive ways as well. So that's why books is here to stay. And the curation of books, which is publishing itself as a process, is here to stay. And so am I.
Nice. And really because like this period of time, this entire situation is really so uncertain, right? And a lot of companies, a lot of businesses are coming to a point in their lifespan where if they don't innovate, they will probably phase out from the entire universe, right? And I like what you just said, like, it's here to stay because books are really a piece of our life and a piece of that story that we have as as growing up. We will be reading books, and then as we grow older, we gain knowledge, we hear the different stories from different people. And that's really nice to hear that, because books will exist, therefore publishers will also continue to exist. And therefore you will continue to be here and journey together with the authors. Right. So that's a really wonderful way of describing it as well. Then in that case, maybe it's a good time to talk about, to share a little bit about perhaps the process of then writing to publishing, right? And I think in the context of what you mentioned about nonfiction books, I know you have an authorship workshop that is coming up that would probably give in a lot more detail about like how the entire process kind of works. Maybe you can just quickly summarize for the audience who would like to know a little bit, but don't know how to ask lah. So I ask for them lah.
Wow, so nice of you. Yeah. Well, to learn the entire thing, it'll probably take you 6 modules. In the past, I used to run 2-day workshop, of which you have attended. Yeah. But I mean, just the gist of it. After working with hundreds of first-time authors, I kind of realized that many people, many aspiring authors, actually lack a structure of how to move from the point where you have a blank piece of paper until the point where a book is out there into the market. So there's a lot of things involved. So because of this, back in 2014, I created a structure, a framework that I feel that it would help a lot of authors to really move in a more structured way, knowing the way ahead, and also clarity on what's involved in the entire journey. So I call it the 6P framework. Yeah, 6P because the first P is planning. Second P is penning. And then after that, preparing, producing, promoting, and publicizing. Michelle, sounds familiar, right?
Absolutely. It rings a bell somewhere at the back of my mind.
Yeah.
But yes.
Can't be too difficult. It's only 6P, yeah. But within this 6P lies many things that as an aspiring author, you should equip yourself with this knowledge, yeah. If not, along the way, you would not be motivated, you will give up, you will procrastinate, and you'll feel disillusioned, and sometimes you get cheated as well, yeah. So having this framework is really to get yourself educated before you embark on the journey. So planning phase really is important because we ask a lot of the why question, yeah. The why, the what, and the who. Who basically means who you're writing for. So as I mentioned, every book should meet a market. And so who is this market that you're writing for? So that's very much in the planning phase of a lot of self-reflection kind of questions that if you have responded and you have written it down, then someday when your book is published, you can always look back and kind of see whether have you achieved the goals that you first set up with. Planning itself then involves how do you create the content. In the workshop, I will share different ways of creating content. So writing a non-fiction book need not be a very lonely journey where you lock yourself up in some Himalayas mountain in a hut for 3 months and create your manuscript. No, so non-fiction book can be more collaborative and there are different ways you can do that. Kind of to help you speed up the process and also get different perspective as well. So that's planning. Planning is also involved creating structures like your table of contents to help you govern the breadth and the depth of the book, which means the scope of the entire book. Then you move into preparing. Preparing, we talk a lot about the essential components of a book. So many often, because these are the things that people often leave to publishers, they don't really know what is the intent behind it or why they should do it. So some authors may grudgingly do it, or they'll tell their publisher, I don't want to do it. But every component in the book place is critical in the sense that you are inviting more stakeholders to support you on the journey. So preparing would involve getting ready, all these things, and also have an end in mind, and that's what we call the book cover itself. As you know, we do exercise in the workshop. I shan't tell you more. It shall not be a spoiler. Yeah. So that's the preparing stage. And after that, producing stage is also important because nowadays with the publishing trade has progressed a lot. It's no longer publishers locked up in ivory towers waiting for manuscripts to come to them. So the whole process has democratized. There are many ways you can get publishing. So largely it will be traditional publishing, self-publishing, hybrid publishing. So the key thing is to understand what are each of these different options out there in the market, understand their pros and cons, and then make a very educated decision on which work best for you when you want to go to the market. So I often hear of horror stories of authors who kind of, because they don't know what is out there, they pick a particular route of publishing, and in the end they feel that, oh man, my hands are tied up, or they become very disillusioned because their expectations are not met. So understanding the different ways of publishing is absolutely important. Yeah. And of course, finally, the last 2P is about promoting and publicizing, which more often than not, most authors do not pay attention to, or do not even think that it is their job, and hence spend the least time and energy on that. Yeah. But fortunately or unfortunately, this last 2P would dictate kind of whether your book would create the outreach for you. Yeah. So if you publish a book and it stays in your storeroom forever, then it's not going to create the impact which I told you about earlier, right?
Yeah.
And hence it's important to think about how to promote your book, how to publicize the book, generate publicity for the book, and even generate publicity for yourself. So for non-fiction book, it's very closely related to you as the author and the kind of work you do in your professional space. Yeah. So the book itself, the more publicity you create, you're actually creating publicity for yourself, which then will give you a leg up in terms of your positioning in the market space.
Cool. That sounds like a lot of things to consider, and I think I can speak from experience of attending the workshop, right? Like how you make it really bite-sized for us to digest and learn. And I attended the face-to-face one, and I know you have now a virtual one, which kind of like spreads it out a little bit more, giving the authors to be a bigger space to actually think about what they plan to do. And I know for me, the challenge was the beginning phase, like the planning phase of who am I writing it for? That question never ever crossed my mind until I attended the workshop. And I'm like, I always wanted to write a book. Who am I writing it for? I don't know. Let me think about it again, right? And that actually puts a lot more perspective and gives a lot more dimension to why I'm writing the book in the first place as well. So I think that's really interesting to actually experience the entire workshop together with you and the others. And I think that the value is also because there's the others. There's that support system of other authors to be who are on this journey together with you to say that, hey, I'm also not as sure as you, we don't know together, then we learn together also. So that's the value of having to go through your session in the workshop. I think that was, I know that was one of my biggest takeaways of having a community to work with.
Thanks for sharing experience. And just to add on, when I first created this workshop, it was really meant to be a how to write and publish your book kind of workshop. But along the way, it's very interesting that many of the participants actually share with me that it is a self-discovery journey for them. So it is quite interesting how these two paths of self-discovery and book publishing kind of move in parallel. And through the workshop, they kind of better discover who they are as a person and what they want to achieve. So even though some of them did not end up writing a book, I'm already happy enough that they found a piece of themselves through the workshop.
I think the value comes from also because you mentioned that your specialization is in non-fiction books. And what you mentioned earlier about non-fiction books being very closely aligned to who you are in the trade that you work in or in the work that you do. And then that also very closely aligned to actually who are you as a person. So I think everything kind of like enmeshes each other and becomes a reflective process for whoever that embarks on it as well. Lah. Yeah. Thanks, Sharon. Thanks, Sharon, for your comment. Sharon was candidly mentioning that she writes fiction in full length, which means that she spends big chunks of her life isolated in a cave in the Himalayas. I hope the scenery and the view is good for you.
Unfortunately, with the current situation, you can only put on your VR goggle.
Or look out of your window. That will be the Himalayas you have. Yeah. Yeah, but thanks for that, because that maybe triggers us to say maybe we want to do fiction books as well, right? Because we can hide in a cave for those of us who are maybe more introverted, right? Please continue to send in your comments, your feedback. I think this is really very good as an interactive process as well for us to share. And we have one more
Send me your questions.
Yeah, send me questions. Yeah, so one more question from Chun Sing. He asks, given the COVID situation, what do you think will be the place for physical books? And what is the impact of COVID on physical books? Well, this is a very business perspective kind of question, I think.
Yeah. Very good question, Chun Sing. As usual, Chun Sing asks good questions.
Yes. He has a book that is also published by Candid Creation on the power of questions, right? What's your question? So, Chun Sing, keep it coming.
Okay. So Chun Sing asked a very good question, because the COVID situation has been quite interesting actually for the book trade from multiple perspectives. So first to answer the question is that there is a place for physical books, definitely. And I did share with you, Michelle, that actually during this period of time, people tend to read more. Yeah. And during the lockdown itself, although people want to read, the library is closed and the bookshops are closed. Yeah. So what we observed was that the online sales of books picked up. So people are ordering books online and books are being delivered to them. Yeah. So that has happened. But if we look at the retail trade perspective, like all retail trade in Singapore, they have taken a beating. And it is not so positive at the moment, because then, of late of new titles that we release, we have been hearing that bookstores are not taking as many books as they used to be. Simply because I think the traffic into the stores have dropped tremendously. So they're all very wary of taking in more books. Which then is a bit of chicken and egg question. So if you don't have new books, then who's going to step into your store? So that's why I'm trying to convince them, take in more books. So physical book is here to stay. It's just that the means of the delivery may change. It's no longer about walking into stores, but a lot more researching and finding out more online and then ordering online. And of course, complementing physical book, there's always the ebook as well. Although ebook as a medium may not appeal to everybody, there are people who simply love ebooks. Like recently, my wife has been reading tons and tons of ebooks from NLB. It's so amazing. She used to read only physical. Now with the tablet, she has been reading tons and tons of ebooks. So we're observing behavior change as a result of COVID as well. And this may be behavior that would change and stay on, even when we move ahead where we are post-COVID.
Thanks for sharing that. I mean, personally for myself, right, as someone who used to read a lot more, have actually slowed down a lot more during this period of time, I find that I can last longer on a physical book. So if I have a physical book in hand, I tend to read longer hours versus a digital book. So I do have I have a Kindle. So I do download a lot of books into my Kindle. But I find myself, especially when especially now, right, with us staring at the screen the whole day, when I do pick up a Kindle book, even though it's interesting and I really want to read it, I tend to be very tired. So I might doze off in the middle of the book versus if I have a physical book. I think the difference is if it's a physical book, if I doze off, I'm more willing to also kind of like bookmark it, put it down, and then go to bed, right? Versus if it's a Kindle, like, or ebook, for me, I might I might just really just doze off there and then then the screen will just turn off by itself lor, in that sense.
Right. Yeah,
Yeah.
actually, that's my experience as well. In fact, for physical book, having a physical book for me, it works like a physical reminder that I'm reading a book. So when I put it on the coffee table or I put it on the bedside table, it's always reminding me that, hey, it's time to read me. It's time to read me. So I tend to finish reading physical books. Whereas tablet, I can totally
Yeah.
forgot that I was reading
Yeah.
it, and hence it takes longer
And
to
I
read.
find that the retainance of information also, I think when I read a physical book, I remember what I read before versus an ebook. So an ebook, I tend to have to, if I stop for like a long period of time and I want to pick it back up, right? I might have to go back like really a few pages to say, oh, okay, so
Mm,
this is where I stopped. And then to try and catch up
mm,
again. So then you would have kind of like lost some time in between also, just try to catch up again. I mean, that's my experience. So the rest of
agree.
you, if you have experience between like a physical book and an ebook, do share as well, right? Your own experience of how that kind of works for you. So we actually have someone who just shared. Um,
Wow.
yeah, that physical books do tend to calm us more than audio or ebooks do. Ah, thanks, Michelle. Hey, Michelle. Hi.
Mm.
Yeah. So it seems
Thanks,
like
Michelle. Yeah.
yeah, that's a great perspective. And therefore, physical books are here to stay because it helps to calm us down. And in this pandemic, we do need that calm and zen a lot
It
more.
is therapeutic, I would say.
Yeah. And we have a question from Vandana
Mm-hmm.
Agawal. Yeah, is that how I pronounce your name? I'm so sorry if I pronounced it wrongly. So her question is, how much time does it take on average for a book to appear on the shelves from the time
Mm.
that it is handed over to the publisher? Great question, Vandan. I think this is a question that
Mm.
all authors would love to know.
Yes. Okay. So thank you, Vandana, for the question. To answer this question, there are many factors that contribute to this entire timeline. Some are within the control of the publisher. Some are not within the control of the publisher. Yeah. So let me try to answer this in quite a simple way. So obviously, the creation of the manuscript uh, um, is the responsibility of the author. Yeah. Usually, from the point where this manuscript is handed over to the publisher, then a good publisher would first review the script, yeah, and then would also give you comments or what we call appraisal on how the book can be further improved, yeah. So this may require the author to make some changes to the original manuscript that has been selected, yeah.
Mm,
So this is the phase where typically publisher can't control. We can set deadlines for authors, but sometimes due to many other reasons, they could
mm,
procrastinate or they couldn't work on it. This can happen, can take a while, can be as fast as 1 week or can be as long as multiple months. And it can take multiple iterations, depending on how responsive the author is towards the feedback and the comments. Yeah. Um, then after that, when the script is finally accepted by the publisher, on average, for us, I mean, I can't represent all publishers in the world. For us, it takes about 3 months for us to do all our professional work to put the book out there into the market. And yes, these 3 months cover the time that we distribute the book into the bookstores as well. Yeah. So in short, from the point where we accept the manuscript and we can control the timeline, it's about 3 months. Anything that we can't control is in your hands.
sounds very Spider-Man. With great power comes great responsibility. And I think that's the truth, right? It's a collaborative kind of process. It's not oh, because you're my publisher, so I leave it to you lah. Then you decide lah. Then you do. Then hey, how come never come out? Then I ask you again, right? But it's a two-way tango kind of process.
It is, yeah. More often than not, I like to call this a co-creation process, yeah, where we need to respect our authors as content creators, and vice versa. Authors need to respect a publisher as the professional in the trade, so that together we work for the best interest of the book, without any personal, objective behind. It's really for the book.
Thanks, Kok Hwa, for the response. Vandana says thank you too. Oh, we have a
Welcome,
question from Terence.
Darren.
With the closure of more bookshops, would ebooks have a more far-reaching capability to reach the targeted audience through social media, email marketing, etc.? Nice question.
Yes. So basically the whether is it ebook or is it physical book, for it to reach the target audience, it would obviously need some effort, in terms of targeting and in terms of presenting the book to where your target readers are. So the thing about ebook, of course, the advantage is that it is easily downloadable, and it doesn't have fulfillment costs involved, right? So for example, if someone in Brazil were to order your book, then of course you need to fulfill by shipping the book, but in terms of the marketing of the book, whether is it a print book or an ebook, you can always do the targeting and the marketing on social media. You get what I mean? As long as they're willing, for print book, as long as they're willing to handle the fulfillment part of it, then of course you still can target them. So the advantage of what you mentioned of social media, email marketing, is of course it allows you the means to really fine tune your campaign and to target your target readers. And when they see your message, then you can always present options to them. Like what we talked about earlier, some people simply like to read ebooks. Some like physical books. Some may even want audiobooks. So the more options that you can cater to them, be it the visual people, the kinesthetic people, the auditory people. These are how adults learn, isn't it? So the more options you can present to them, then your chance of them picking up your book will be higher lah. So that's how I see it.
And I think just to chip in a little bit, because I recently just did up my own PDF version of an ebook. I don't think either way is easier for the author. I think both ways you need to get the content out, right? So whether it's an ebook or whether it's a physical book, the amount of time and effort that we're going to put in is similar. And the amount of thought process behind and structuring the entire book is similar. And I think like what Kok Hwa mentioned, if it's viable and it's something that we want to achieve, then we could do both, right? We could request from the publisher to say, hey, can I have my book in ebook version and physical book version, and maybe even consider audiobook to be rolled out into the market? Would the publishers like yourself be able to do that?
Yes, indeed. So it's a conversation that you need to have a publisher. And of course, it also depends on the capability of the publisher in what kind of means they are able to publish the book in.
Nice. Cool. Thanks, Terence, for your question. I think that was a nice question for me to also insert my own question. and Vandana has another question. This is very direct. Do you also offer editing services, or is it the onus of the writer to find their own editing options?
Okay, good question. So this, I take it that this question is presented to me as a publisher of Candid Creation Publishing. So again, I cannot speak on behalf of other publishers. So yes, we offer editing services. In fact, editing is a core component of the entire publishing process. So it's not an a la carte service where you can just pick editing service. So we don't offer a la carte editing service, but it is core to what we do. And hence, yes, we order editing services. Even though you may tell me that I have already had a friend who edited the book for me. Through our past experience, we have heard that too many times. And obviously, friends being friends, they may not be the professional in the trade. So even though it has been edited by someone, we still need to edit it from our professional perspective.
And I think that's also important. Important because you would know how the edits will be needed to be done so that the book is sellable also, right? In that sense.
Yes, indeed.
Cool. And we have Dennis. Thank you, Vandana, for your question. We have Dennis who has 3 questions, one short, ask all 3. Yeah. So
Dennis, you're not good. Now your question cover our face.
okay, we try. Okay. So Dennis's first question is about ISBN registration. One can obtain free ISBNs in Singapore and he has seen overseas service providers like BookBaby proving their ISBNs as well. Could you share the benefits of registering ISBNs in Singapore instead?
Okay. Yeah, in fact, there was a second part. Was told if registered overseas, it gives better reach in overseas market. Yeah. Okay, so first and foremost, ISBN registration, it is based on a global, it goes into a global register. Yeah. So every country have their own ISBN issuing agencies. Yeah. And in fact, we are very blessed to be in Singapore because we get ISBN for free. In some countries, to publish a book, you need an ISBN. You literally have to pay for an ISBN. Yeah. And of course, like what Dennis has mentioned, some service provider do provide ISBN as part of the service package when you sign up with them. Yeah. I wouldn't say that ISBN would affect the reach of your book. I also wouldn't say that this service provider, because of the ISBN, will give you better reach in overseas market. Yeah. What matters is that after the book is published, where do you make the book available in? So in the trade, there are what we call the book aggregators. Yeah. So if you list your book with book aggregators, like Ingram Spark, then your book would immediately be in their catalog. Yeah. So in their catalog merely means that it is just a record in their catalog. At the end of the day, for a book to appear in a country like Iceland, a bookstore in Iceland, you still need the book buyer to actually place an order for the book before it can be made available in the bookstore. Yeah. So it has nothing to do with ISBN in the case like this. Hope I answered your question.
Nice. The ISBN is like the IC number of the book, is it?
Yes, indeed. It is a unique identifier for every book.
Okay, cool. So that's just to explain to the layman, right? Like, what is ISBN? So yeah, ISBN is like a unique identification, right? So there's question 2 from Dennis that asks, how do you have the published books available in local bookstores and libraries?
Okay.
I think I'll interpret the question as like, what are the steps to getting that? Yeah.
Then the follow-up is, or is this dependent on local publishers? Okay.
Instead.
Yep. Okay, so in local market, the bookstores work with distributors. Yeah. So as an individual author, they don't entertain individuals. So imagine, 50 people knocking on their door every day trying to promote to them their book. So they go to distributors. So of course you can find a distributor and help them and then appoint them to help you push your book into the bookstore. Yeah. So that being said, the final decision always lies with the book buyers from the bookstore. They will review your book and they may make a decision to take in your book or not to take in your book. Yeah. So that's a decision by the buyer. For libraries, our NLB, they work with local, what we call library agents. Yeah. So again, these are all appointed companies by the library. If I'm not wrong, they do tender every, don't know how many years lah. Then library agents will bid for it, then they'll be appointed to do the job. So yes, you need to go through library agents before you can enter local library. And the library agents, of course, would do much more work lah. They need to help them in the cataloging or maybe doing out the stickers and things like this. Yeah. So it's like a outsourced service that they provide to the library. So to enter the library, you need to work through library agents.
So as a follow-up question, then does candid creation work with these book buyers, distribution agents as well as library agents to get the books out into the bookstore, or
Yes,
does
we
Candid
do.
Publication
Yes, we do.
only do it on your own?
No, so we work with appointed distributors as well. That's why you find our books in bookstores as well as in National Library. Yeah. So this is something that we provide, to support our authors lah. But again, that being said, I mean, so sometimes book buyer will look at the publisher, before they make a decision on a book purchase, and sometimes self-published book do have a lower perceived quality. So I have a distributor who once shared with me that when they see that it's a self-published book, they won't even want to consider.
Wow.
Or if they see that a book comes from a particular publisher, they also won't consider. So sometimes there are these conditions that buyers won't tell you, but that's how they process their decisions.
Cool. Wow. There's really a lot of processes behind the scenes that we don't get a chance, only because we have this session, we won't get a chance to be aware of that. Like, there's so many more connections. I think most of the time, perhaps from an author's perspective, is, I just have to liaise with publisher lah, and then I don't know what's next, right, in that sense. But now that you're sharing, I think that behind the scenes, the publisher now has to also connect with a lot of other people to make sure that the books also go out onto the shelves, to be seen and to be sold, right? There is actually the third question, which, because it's so long, couldn't come up on screen. So I'm just going to read off from the comments. Dennis noted that you have helped authors have their published books translated into other languages to break into other markets, such as the one from Terence Chiu, I think. So could you share how this process is like? So I'm going to say that the process is the translation process and the breaking into the other markets process. I think there's two parts.
So to answer this question, so in the book trade itself, once you have created the content for a book in the language that you have written, that is then, of course, the primary language of the book, but in the book trade, there are what we call translation rights of the book, which means a particular book, you may then see it in multiple languages, be it in Chinese, in Spanish, in Italian, or what have you. So typically, book trades are transacted between publishers. So publisher and publisher, they would then kind of buy and sell rights, to take on the rights to actually translate the book into their local language, and then to release the book into their market in that particular language. So a lot depends on the publisher as well. So for us, we are fortunate that over the years we have agents in Vietnam. So that's the case about Terrence's book, who help us to pitch the books to Vietnamese publisher. And then when one of them say that, hey, this is a good book that we would like to have to publish in our market, then that's where the rights negotiation would happen. And then finally, when the deal is struck, the publisher would then take on the entire translation work and finally publishing it out there into the market. So that's how it works.
Wow. Thanks, Dennis, for asking such deep questions to really dig into the behind the scenes of a publisher. Thank you, Dennis. And we have one question from Michelle. How do you help aspiring or budding authors find their voice and translate that into a published work?
Thanks, Michelle, for the question. So
come for the authorship workshop. That's the short answer to this question.
Thanks for answering the question, Michelle. So really, it is a lot of as to how I help. It's anchored on a coaching process, which then very much is anchored on questions that I ask, because so that's the two different hat that I wear. When I take off the publisher hat and I put on the coach hat, I would then ask questions to actually help authors to reflect and to crystallize their thoughts, and in the process to find their voice before they start writing and before it can become a translated work. Yeah. So, Michelle, you have experienced that in the workshop, where although it's a workshop, it's not really a training because you don't hear me talking all the time.
It is a workshop. He emphasized you need to do the work
Yes,
while
it's
he
not a
goes
sit,
shopping. No,
not a sit shop. It's a
not a
workshop.
sit shop, it's a workshop.
Yeah, yeah. So now, in fact, with the virtual masterclass, because I have torn it apart, I've broken down apart into 6 modules. You can expect even more homework now because in between modules you have more time. So there's a lot of all this kind of work to actually help you take a step-by-step process to kind of unpack everything that you have within you, in order to meet the objectives that you have set for yourself for the book. Yeah. So it's not a case of me dictating how it should be done, and you follow the instructions of how it is done. Yeah. So that's not the way. I prefer to really help you to dig further inside, because at the end of the day, you would have a greater sense of ownership, and of course you feel more motivated, yeah, if what you're producing can resonate with the outcome that you want to achieve. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, and I will second that. I think the entire process is really very reflective, and I think the current batch, I've seen testimonials from participants in the current batch, not the current, but the one that just ended their stint with the workshop, doing a lot of reflection, and they do share that reflection online. Like I see them posting onto LinkedIn, I see them posting on Facebook, and I thought that even though like what Kok Hwa mentioned earlier on, right, that they might not eventually come up with a book now or immediately, he's very heartened that the process helps to crystallize those thoughts, and then eventually when they are ready, they will probably produce something. And I'm one of those, right? I was an attendee of the workshop last year until this year, with him still bugging me occasionally. He's not naggy. He'll occasionally say, "So how? You ready?" And I think that's very encouraging, because sometimes we get so caught up with our routine, and there's that voice at the back of our head like, no lah, we're not ready yet lah. But the constant, the not constant, but more like the friendly voice that comes in and says, "So how are you going? How are you doing? You know, are you ready?" I think that really helps as part of the process to just prompt along the way. And I really appreciate that from a participant and a friend's perspective. Yeah, so thank you to Kok Hwa. One more question from Chun Sing as a reality check. Based on your knowledge in general in Singapore, what is the percentage of locally published non-fiction books that make a profit? Whether 10% or 90%, why is that?
Okay. Thanks, Chun Sing, for the question. Yeah, once again, we got to promote Chun Sing's book. Chun Sing is the author of What's Your Question?
Which is why questions, many questions.
Yeah, thanks for the reality check question. Yeah. So I really like your question because you focus on profit rather than sales. Yeah. So more often than not, authors may have a fixated way of looking at sales, of book sales. And they will every day they'll be counting, wow, today I sell 1 copy only. Wow, tomorrow I never sell 1 copy. Why is it so sad? Yeah. So if you're always counting book sales, then I can almost tell you that I would say 70% of the time you'll be disappointed. Okay? Yeah. So if we look at the larger definition of profit, then we have to bring ourselves back to our earlier conversation of a means to an end. What is this end that you're trying to achieve? And have you achieved that end? And if you look at the profit, has this end actually helped you to create the profit because of a book? Yeah. So just to share an example, so I have authors that come to me and say that the book, yeah, after publishing the book, they have shared it with a prospect. So they are in consulting business. Yeah. Share with a prospect. First time that they met, these two persons first time that they met, share the book with them. Yeah. So this person took back the book, and guess what? He actually read the book overnight. Yeah. And next day, the prospect actually called him up and said, "Hey, I want to offer, I need your consulting services. Yeah. Can you come down and share with me more about how you can help me?" Yep. And from that process, he has closed a deal. Yeah. I did not ask how big it is, but as you know, consulting deals would easily be 5-figure and above. Hence, it is just a single book that has immediately created a profit for him. And I would say that it probably has already covered whatever he has put in. Yeah. So this is not the only time I hear stories like this. Even selling of training programs, where people were to Google, and after that the book pops up, and the person order the book without the knowledge of the author, read the book, and then after that call up the author and say, "Hey, I want to have your training program because I really like what you have shared in your book, and I believe it will help my people. So please tell me what program do you have to offer." Yeah. So I think if we look at profit from that end perspective, it is much broader, and will definitely keep you more excited. Yeah. As compared to counting books lah.
I think I remember you mentioned once that the book serves as a extended or expanded version of a name card. Right? You mentioned something like that before.
Yes, I mentioned that a book is a name card on steroids. Yeah. So just imagine the case earlier, if this person were to offer the prospect a name card, yeah, more often than not, you'll be forgotten. Yeah. Or even if you present a brochure, more often than not, you will end up in the bin. Yeah. But how often do you see people receiving a book and throwing it away? Quite low lah. And if they don't read, on the table, you always nag at them. Read me, read me, read me. Right? Like the experience I shared with you earlier. So if not overnight, maybe 1 week later they see the book and they pick it up. Then ta-da! Immediately they call you up.
Yeah. So I think it's interesting because it's not just about training programs, it's not about consultancy, but even giving talks, right? Giving speeches, like motivational talks or lunchtime talks, that could be an added on version of what will help in terms of when this question about profit. It's not about the number of books that you sell, but there are many extensions of from a book. What else can happen?
Yes.
I think that's the amazing thing.
Yes. So in the workshop, we also get participants to kind of reflect on what are different channels, different streams of potential revenue, and that gives them a reassurance of whether they are on the right track or not. Yeah. If after looking at all the streams of revenue and it doesn't cover the cost, then don't publish. It's perfectly all right. Yeah. Then you're talking about giving talks, right? So books help you to create talks. And in the past, sometimes companies, especially now, they will always tell you, "Hey, sorry, I got no budget to pay you as a speaker, but I still want to hear you talk." So the good thing that now you have a book, right? Then you can tell them it's okay, you don't pay me speaker fee, but can you buy books? Right? So buying books may come from a different pocket of money, a different budget. And suddenly they will tell you, "Oh yes, I can buy something for my employees." Especially now times are bad. I need to buy books as part of employee well-being.
Yeah.
Ta-da! Profit again.
To motivate them, right? To motivate them, for them to calm down earlier on, how books can help us to calm down. So that
Exactly. And show that the employer cares.
Yeah. So Chun Seng says thanks for the response. It was a great response. And then
Great
Michelle also says sounds great because you answered her question earlier on as well. And thank you for sharing. We have probably time for just one more question.
Which time also flies,
yeah. And well, time always flies when we are having fun. And you are the one in the hot seat. I'm having fun asking questions.
I was thinking, wow, if tonight no question, we can pack up in 15 minutes.
Well, your 15 minutes is on steroids too. It went on to 60 minutes. Okay, so this question is a direct question to you as the book publisher as well. If the book is not for sale but is distributed free, does it affect the cost of publication? Good question, Vandana.
Yep, good question. So obviously, sales and cost, they are not related. Yeah. Uh, because cost is about service. It's about it's about professional services. It's about printing costs. So these are the costs that goes into a book. Yeah. At the end of the day, whether a book is for sale or not, then it's a decision to be made whether you want to sell it to someone, and if you want to sell it at what price. Yeah. So maybe I'm guessing that you're probably asking, so if I'm not selling the book, right? So how can I then fund the project? Yeah. So that's a third component, which is called book funding. Yeah. Which may not be related to the sales of the book, but it's a question of how can I find funds to fund the cost of publishing? Yeah. Then that's a separate conversation already, because funding can be again through many different ways. So yes, there are individuals that we work with, or there are companies that we work with who publish book and they don't really sell it. Yeah. So they found a way to fund the book, and obviously they are convinced that even by giving a book, it will have fulfilled the objective that they want for the book.
So maybe just an add on to this question as well. I know of people who actually went onto like Kickstarter to ask for crowdfunding, right, to fund their book. So have you had a personal experience of any of your authors that maybe took that direction to say, I would like to put my book onto Kickstarter and ask or this kind of crowdfunding kind of platforms to try and receive the first amount of funds to get the book published? Have you had experience with that?
Okay. Good question, Michelle. So crowdfunding, yes, is a way to fund the project cost of a book. Yeah. But crowdfunding is not limited to only crowdfunding sites. So it could be as simple as even on your website, you create a page and you start to collect pre-orders for your book. That itself is also considered a crowdfunding, yeah. Or even if you have lots of WhatsApp friends, or if you're on WeChat, you have a WeChat group, and you send out a message, and then people just respond and say, "Hey, I'm going to buy your book," yeah, which is what we call a pre-order of your book. That is also considered crowdfunding, yeah. So yes, I also have authors who have used crowdfunding platform as well to fund their books. And because of crowdfunding, today they are published authors lah. And the good thing about crowdfunding or even collecting pre-orders is that at the end of the day, it is a very great motivator for you to finally publish the book. Yeah. If not, you have hundreds of people waiting for you and knocking on your door every day.
Nice. And I think Vandana wants to fine-tune her question. She asked what she meant was, does the publisher get a fraction of the sales profits in the absence of which the publishing price goes up?
Okay. I'm trying to understand the question again. So basically different publishers work differently. All have different business model. Some publishers would take a cut of the sales. Or in fact, if you reverse the equation, the publisher would take the sales from the book, and then from there they pay out a royalty to the author. Yeah. So there's a split then of the profits from the book. So obviously in this particular model, if the book is not for sale and you're expecting the publisher to fund the book, then confirm they're making a loss, right? So more likely than not, they won't publish the book because they need to recover their investment from the sales of the book.
Okay. Yeah. Cool. Thank you. Hope that answers your question, Vandana. If it doesn't, just drop us another comment and then we'll see how we can further enhance the response to you. So to end off the night, the master of questions has a last question for you. So what is the greatest joy and reward of you being a publisher?
Wow. Okay. Deep reflection question. Yeah. The greatest joy and rewards, I would say, is whenever I receive authors testimonial. Yeah. Testimonials like this kind of gives me a reality check. Yeah. Because sometimes I may feel that I'm doing a good job, but it may not be real, right? So perception is reality, right? And I don't need to hear such perception because it keeps me going in the work that I'm doing. As I told you earlier, publishing is not enriching. Yeah. I might as well go and do other things. So identifying this purpose is important for me and for my authors to tell me that yes, I have really helped them to fulfill a dream. I've really helped them to become a better person. I have helped them to create a larger impact because of what they have shared. These are all the things that create joy for me. Yeah. And hence the rewards are very intangible. Yeah. Very intangible rewards of just understanding that simply because of my presence, yeah, I'm able to not give birth. I'm able to help more people become published authors, without which they may not become a published author, or their script may still be sitting in their drawers, yeah, or they may become disillusioned because they took certain wrong steps, yeah. So every person that I publish, I kind of tell myself, wow, I've just saved another person. That keeps me going.
Yeah. I think that's a really nice way to round up the session. Chun Seng gives you thumbs up.
Thank you, Chun Seng, for your faith and confidence all this while.
And Bandana also say thanks for the response you gave her earlier. I think that perhaps really answered her question. And I think that's a nice way that you also ended off, right? Like how you acknowledge your presence in the journey that the authors are on. And I like that you mentioned that from the perspective of not just being a publisher. I think most publishers and I don't know many, so it could be that they're doing a job. But whereas in your case, it sounds like when the way you expressed it sounds like you are not just there to do a job. You're there as a partner, as a collaborator, as a companion to journey with the author. And the relationship between the publisher and the author really just goes hand in hand, right? I think earlier on you mentioned it's difficult to detach the two. And you demonstrate it through the work that you do as a publisher as well. So thank you, Kok Hwa, for your time this evening, and thank you for taking up the egging on of the challenge of, hey, maybe you should do a hello, I am a publisher, ask me anything session. And we're going to share a last slide with everyone who's watching. And I think many times during this session, we did share a little bit about the program that Kok Hwa offers as part of the process in response to like Michelle Lim's question with how do you guide or how do you encourage budding authors in terms of their reflection process. So you can contact Kok Hwa for more information and details. This is his contact. You can also check out his LinkedIn profile. Beyond his publishing journey, he posts a lot of other nuggets of information and knowledge to share of his other portfolios, like a coach, as well as someone who's very passionate about people and development. But yeah, do check out his Facebook page, his email address, and his LinkedIn is all there, and then the website as well. If you want to order books online, that's where you can go to as well, the website for you to order his books and his author's books from his website. This is the authorship workshop, and like he mentioned earlier, this is going virtual. This will be the second cohort that is virtual. These are the dates that are available, and it's happening soon, right, Kok Hwa?
Yes, indeed. 1st April will kick off on 1st April. That will be for Module 1. Yes, September.
April has passed. Are we talking about next April?
Did I put April?
No, you said April.
I said April?
Yes.
Why on earth did I say April?
I don't know. But 1st April is April Fool's Day. It's not an April Fool's joke. He is really going to have a session on the 1st of September. And I have volunteered to attend the second run, as in to attend again, because I need to get kicked in the ass to get the whatever I want out there into the market as well. But yeah, so do join us on this 1st of September cohort. And it's like what he said, right? Spread over a longer duration. It's no longer a 2-day session. And I look forward to the homework because I think, as what you mentioned, it's going to be very reflective, and it's a good time and opportunity to reflect in our busy lives. COVID hasn't made our lives any less busy. In fact, it might have made it more busy for some of us. And hopefully this entire process of going through this virtual masterclass with Kok Hwa and his team will allow us to slow down a little bit, reflect a little bit. And like he mentioned, worst case scenario, if you don't come up with a book, at least you have had a deeper understanding of yourself and who you are. And I do look forward to that journey and that deeper discovery of who I am. Any last words, Kok Hwa, before we end the show for tonight?
Any last words? Wow, you caught me by surprise. Yeah.
That's my role.
Well, I guess I always like to say that a journey of 1,000,000 miles starts with the first step. So sometimes this first step may turn out to be the most difficult step because this could be a step of faith. Yeah. I just hope that whoever is looking at us, viewing us right now, have confidence that there's a book in you. It's really a matter of being able to extract this book out. And I hope tonight is the session where you make a decision that you want to take the first step.
Thank you very much, Kok Hwa. Thank you for your wise words of wisdom. And we do I do look forward to attending the workshop. I hope more people will join us in that session. And thanks all of those of you who have watched us throughout this entire 1 hour. At some point, we actually hit about 20 views on screen. Thank you very much for being a part of tonight's session. We hope that you have taken away some great nugget information and knowledge. And if there are further questions, I think Kok Hwa's not going to go away. He already mentioned that very long ago. So you can continue to post your questions onto the Facebook page here in the comments, and I think when he has the availability of time, he will probably drop you a message privately, like a private message. If you have any questions with regards to the authorship workshop, again, you can just drop him a private message, or Candid Creations a private message, and they will definitely get back to you. Right. So with that, thank you very much for this evening's session.
Thank you, Michelle. Thank you, Michelle. Yeah, I must thank you. Yes.
And we're going to say goodbye to all our audience. Goodbye, good night, and have a great weekend that's coming up.
Yes, have a nice weekend. Good night.